Then I have some questions to start with. That first question is there that suppose you go to interview. No? And suppose you look this angry as you're looking as of now. अगर आप इंटरव्यू में पहुंच गए और अगर आप इतने गुस्से में दिखे जितने गुस्से में अभी आप मुझे देख रहे हैं तो मार्क्स डिडक्ट कर देंगे. अब ये बात तो बहुत अलग सी बात हो जाएगी. So in interview, you would have to become like a smiling Buddhas. There is no doubt about this. Not at all. ये इंटरव्यू के 2 दिन पहले तो आप प्रैक्टिस नहीं कर पाएंगे. If you are like a smiling Buddha, you're always like a smiling Buddha. So first, I like smiling candidates because optional, suppose you're studying for 5 months. No, suppose you're preparing for optional for 5 months. और 5 महीने कोई बच्चा गुस्से में आपके सामने बैठा हो. You can imagine the life of the teacher. कि उस टीचर की जिंदगी कितनी तबाह हो जाएगी. So, among all of you, the most smiling Buddha is now Bunny. You have to compete with Bunny. Bunny Bakshi से compete करने की पहले कोशिश करेंगे. Then I'll start the competition from the start itself because we are appearing for the competitive field, basically. Now to talk about history as the optional, पर history की बात करने से पहले, if you are there on camera, life would be far more easier for me. अगर आप कैमरे पे होंगे तो सेशन बहुत इंटरेक्टिव होगा. दोस्ती भी थोड़ी जल्दी हो जाए. 5 महीने पढ़ने के लिए तो थोड़ी दोस्ती करनी पड़ेगी. थोड़ी सी दोस्ती तो करनी ही पड़ेगी कम से कम. यू एग्री विथ मी और नॉट? तो दोस्त दिखना भी चाहिए. इफ यू आर देयर ऑन कैमरा द थिंग्स वुड बी फार मोर इजियर. इन यूपीएससी देयर इज नो वन लाइक अ टीचर एंड अ स्टूडेंट. वी डिस्कस समथिंग इन द क्लास and we derive the knowledge that is needed for UPSC. That is what the basic thing that we do. So first I will start asking some questions and answering those questions. But before that, you should know that when you talk about history optional, no? You talk about history optional. Basically, history optional is the simplest optional. And why it should be considered the simplest optional? Because anyway, when you talk about GS, you are going to discuss ancient and medieval. पढ़ेंगे in GS, modern and world history. 70% of the syllabus of history optional is already covered in GS. When you mix analysis and historiography, what is historiography? The way history is written, no, the way history is written, that is what is called historiography. So when you mix analysis and historiography, 30% more analysis, Meenakshi, Shravani, Amrit, then you directly jump to the history optional level. So first of all, when you talk about history optional, it's very simple. Your task is very simple. Whatever you know in GS, factual thing, just make it very conceptual with the help of historiography, the way history is interpreted. And then that will take you directly to the history optional level. That is what the task is. And if you reverse it, अब इसे उल्टा कर दीजिए. If you're prepared for history optional and you do not want to use the analytical and historiography part in exam, anyway, you are 100% part prepared for the GS history in exam. So a byproduct of history optional preparation is that anyway, you're 100% prepared for GS history part. History is the mother branch. No, history is the mother branch. Samriddhi, Bunny, Amrit, if you talk about mother branch, what do you mean by mother branch? Look, for all the subjects, Gayatri, there is always a background. No, Meenakshi, there is always a background. You say economy, you'll say economic development. You say society, social development. You say polity, constitutional development. For every subject, to understand that there is a background. So the background would come through history. History is the mother branch. History है सारे subjects की mummy. You cannot do without history. मम्मी के बिना बिल्कुल भी काम नहीं चलेगा जिंदगी में. It is just like that. History is just like mother branch. History is mother branch for all the subjects. So when we talk about history optional, Samriddhi, Meenakshi, how to understand that first? When we approach history optional, Bunny, what is the trouble? Mostly the students think that history is all about facts. No? If you say history is all about facts, then dictionary is literature. That way, is dictionary literature? No, dictionary is not literature. It is just like that. All the words are there, but that is not literature. Facts are not history. The intelligent interpretation of those facts, this is what would make history. So you have to be careful. Do not try to approach history through facts. Try to approach it through concepts. Then how we can do that? What the strategy that should be there? Then we will discuss maps. In history optional, one of the biggest troubles that the students feel, that would be the map section. But don't you think that if I talk about the inscriptions of Ashoka, you cannot better understand it unless you use the maps to understand different parts of India where the Ashokan inscription they have been found. Maps basically are not the difficult part of the subjects. Basically, maps are there to help you understand the subjects in a better way. So बिना maps के तो subject पढ़ ही नहीं सकते हैं आप. Maps automatically gets prepared. How it would get automatically get prepared? I'll show you. I'll show you the questions and how to tackle the map questions in history. Optional. Then what are the sources? What are the books that we can follow? No, what are the books that we can follow to understand and to go for history optional? So we'll discuss facts or concept, which way we should go for. In understanding history, optional. What is the strategy to tackle history optional? Then the maps, how to tackle the map question and what are the important books for the history optional. यही बात डिस्कस करेंगे पर उससे पहले Shivanshi, Sophia, Joseph, Trisha, Devang, if you're there on camera, and all of you there, if you're there on camera, the session would be far more interactive. अच्छा एक मजेदार सी बात है, कुछ खास बात है जो मैं पहले ही बता दूं. If you want to join the class, पहले आपको एक बात पता होनी चाहिए. Some of the students they may join it offline, some of the students may join it online as well. In UPSC form, they would ask whether they would ask that you are an offline or online candidate. पूछेंगे आपसे? No. So we will not make any difference between the offline and online candidates. First thing that you have to understand. And second thing that you have to understand that Bani, Meenakshi, Shravani, all of you, that when you are there, even in online class, you are joining it through online, I would like you to be there on camera so that the class would be very interactive. Second thing that when you are studying and suppose you are dropping in attention, अगर आपका attention धीमे जा रहा होगा तो मैं पहले आपको डांट दूंगा स्पर्धा कि हैंडराइटिंग अच्छी करनी है. No, that you have to study very well. You cannot deviate. So when you are constantly getting nudged in the direction towards proper study, that is what would make the time, 5 months, time very fruitful. Second thing, I'll discuss so many sources about history optional, but I would like you to read none. For example, Ancient India, difficult to deal with, Upinder Singh, very factual. Very good book, but very factual, Upinder Singh, no? Then Ramila Thapar, very conceptual, but difficult to understand. No, Ramila Thapar is very good, but then it is difficult to understand, no, Trisha? Then you talk about so many other books. Aapne bola the Rai, Majumdar and Chaudhary, the trinity of the books. It was also there on Ancient India. You talk about D.D. Kosambi, you talk about D.N. Jha. There are so many books, R.S. Sharma, so many books. I'll talk about the sources, but then whatever sources are there, suppose for Ancient India, you do not have to worry about it. Your task is very simple. I will discuss anything that is good in any of these sources. जितनी भी किताबें हैं उसमें जो भी काम की बात है, in all the books, whatever is good, I will discuss that here in the class. And then simple, I will dictate that to you in point format. I'll dictate that to you in simple point format. Your task is simple. When you go back home, you have to go back home and you have to revise that 20 minutes every day. आपका काम बहुत simple है history optional में, that for 20 minutes, you just have to revise those notes that I have dictated you here in the class itself. जो मैंने आपको क्लास में लिखाया, उसे 20 मिनट घर पे जाके पढ़ लीजिए. More than that, nothing is required. Out, every single question you would be able to answer in UPSC exam. UPSC exam में सारे क्वेश्चन आंसर करके आ जाएंगे. हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल में मेरा काम बहुत सिंपल है. किसी भी बुक में कोई भी काम की बात है मैं क्लास में डिस्कस करूंगा. I'll dictate that in the class notes. आपका काम बहुत सिंपल है, गो बैक होम, रिवाइज दैट, गो बैक होम, रिवाइज दैट, कम बैक, that would be more than sufficient. Just one thing is required, that you have to be regular in the class. क्या आप क्लास में रेगुलर आइए, that's all. Second thing, how I conduct the test. मैं टेस्ट कैसे कंडक्ट करूंगा? It is not that I let you know that you have to now revise ancient India and I'll go for a test for that. No, that is not the way I conduct the test. Because suppose I upload 10 questions, you see the class notes and you write it down. It would not generate the productivity. It would not increase the efficiency. Suppose I have to go for the test. It's the way how we will go for the test. Each time one chapter is over. Not a big part, just one chapter is over. Revising that is easy. Just the day the one chapter is over, one chapter is over, that day itself there would be a test. जिस दिन एक chapter खत्म होगा, उसी दिन एक test होगा, and you have to write that in front of me. If you're online, be there on camera. If you're all offline, be here in class and write that test in front of me. अब इससे आपको मुश्किल होगी. You would be in trouble because you're deducing the answer then and there itself. But in exam, what you're doing, you're deducing your answer then and there itself. Is this not? Suppose 50 times you go for such test, exam is very simple. You are used to deducing the answer in real time. No, in real time. Writing the answer by looking at the sources and the notes is not very productive. Nahi hai productive. When you are given a question as a surprise and you think and deduce your answer then and there itself, that is what makes you prepare for the exam. तब आप एग्जाम के लेवल पे पहुंचते हैं. सो क्लास टेस्ट क्लास में इंटीग्रेटेड होंगे, ऑप्शनल के सारे क्लास टेस्ट क्लास में इंटीग्रेटेड होंगे. क्लास में मैं भी होऊंगा. नो, आई वुड बी देयर इन द क्लास. Then you write the answer there itself. Then I'll discuss the answer structure in the class itself, and then your answers would be evaluated. Then if after every single chapter there is a test, don't you think that the backlog is not huge? Every single chapter you are revising. हर single chapter आप revise कर रहे होंगे. Samriddhi, Shravani, clear with this? Meenakshi, clear with this? This is how the class tests would be there. Class tests ऐसे होंगे. Each after one chapter there would be a class test. Then in there itself, live in front of me, you have to attend those class tests. अब एक छोटी सी बात. How to tackle UPSC history optional? First simple thing. It's history fact. It's history all about fact. It's absolutely a misconcept. It's absolutely a misconcept. You should first know that history is not about facts. History is all about concepts. At optional level, what you have to do, the GS facts that you know, you have to make it more and more conceptual, more and more conceptual. अब इसे कैसे करेंगे? I will invite some queries from your side, but before that, Amrit, Bunny, I would like to show you something. अगर आपको लगता है कि history is all about facts, I'll show you some examples. See here. I'll start with the last. आपने बोला Pitt's India Act, when it was there? 1784. Pitt's India Act, 1784. It's constitutional development. Most of the students, Meenakshi, most of the students, they would like to mug up the provisions of the Pitt's India Act. क्या हुआ था Pitt's India Act में? The Board of Control was created in England to control the court of directors. To control the court of directors. अब एक बात simple सी बात समझिए. Court of directors. What was court of directors? 24 directors of the company, East India Company, they were ruling over the East India Company from London. And to control the court of directors, the Board of Control was created. The Board of Control, it had 2 cabinet members. So the Board of Control was being controlled by the British Parliament. The Board of Control was being controlled by British Parliament. So अब क्या बात हुई? When you talk about the Pitt's India Act of 1784, what we know that the British Parliament controlled the company, now increased the control over the company through the Board of Control by controlling the court of directors. So एक बात तय थी that the British were increasing their control over the East India Company. इतनी बात तो आप समझते हैं. But why this was going on? Meenakshi, why this was going on? Because American Revolution. What was the time period of American Revolution? 1776 to 83. 1776 to 83. American Revolution is also called American War of Independence. No, Sparda, Gayatri. American Revolution is also called American War of Independence. क्या बात हुई? The British colonies in America, they revolted. The British colonies in America, they revolted, and eventually after independence, they became United States of America. No? Meenakshi, Bunny, clear with this? Shravani, Bunny, clear with this? Then, don't you think that after American War of Independence, the American colonies became independent and went out of the British control? You agree with this? So don't you think that in American War of Independence, the British had lost America? Was it not a big loss to the British? 1783, they lost America. Don't you think that in 1784, they brought the Pitt's India Act, and that was increasing the control of the British government over the East India Company? Don't you think that through the East India Company, now the British were increasing their control over India because they had just lost America? It was certain that it would increase the control of the British government over India through the East India Company. That is why the Pitt's India Act was there. In GS, आप क्या लिखेंगे? Pitt's India Act, the provisions. In optional, what you will write? The angle of American War of Independence. That would make it more conceptual. In GS, what they would write? That there was board of control to control the company. In optional, what you will write? Why the board of control was created? To create more control over the company. Do you understand the difference between GS and optional now? इतना ही difference होता है that you just try to make the things far more conceptual when you move towards the optional level. एक और example देता हूँ that think about it, Anglo-Maratha War. The 3 Anglo-Maratha wars were there in GS. आपने पढ़ा होगा there were 3 Anglo-Maratha wars. मीनाक्षी इतने गुस्से में कौन पढ़ता है? Much better, much better, much better. So the per capita smile of the seminar should not go down. बिल्कुल भी नहीं. Now, if we talk about the Anglo-Maratha War, Gayatri, don't you think that Anglo-Maratha War, the Marathas controlled Deccan? The Marathas controlled Deccan, and Deccan was cotton producing area. Deccan was cotton producing areas further. So don't you think that when Deccan was cotton producing area, cotton was much needed for textile revolution in England? Cotton was much needed for textile revolution in England. Don't you think that if the Marathas were controlling the cotton producing area, the British would like to have control over those areas? If this is so, don't you think that Anglo-Maratha War was inevitable because the Marathas were controlling the cotton producing area and the British would like to have a control over there so that they could actually feed their industrial textile revolution in England. So Anglo-Maratha War, one of the regions would be cotton producing area in India, Deccan, black soil area. Simple, conceptual. आपने बोला Anglo-Mysore War. Don't you think that if we talk about Mysore, if Mysore would become very prominent state, it would obstruct the trade of Malabar for the British? Tipu Sultan, Hyder Ali, they were obstructing the trade of the British in Malabar area, the spice trade. So if a spice trade would be obstructed for the British, don't you think that the British were traded like people? They were always looking for money. They were always looking for money. And when this would be there, certainly this would lead to a conflict. This would lead to a conflict between the British and Mysore side. Is that simple? So first thing, there is always a conceptual angle. No, first thing that there is always a conceptual angle. And when you talk about history optional, you have to talk about the conceptual angle first. GS to optional, become more and more conceptual, become more and more conceptual. Then this is the first thing. This is the first thing that I want to discuss, that if you have to tackle history optional, not fact, but concept, not fact, but you have to try to tackle it through the conceptual method. More and more conceptual effort should be there. Then one practical example, how UPSC would ask the question and how to deal with that. But before that, anyone has got any question? किसी के पास कोई सवाल है? Devang, no problem. Anyone has got any question? Then I'll discuss more. Anyone? किसी को कोई सवाल पूछना है? Then see this one question. If this is the way we have to tackle history, how UPSC would ask the question and how we would be able to answer those questions. Rather than giving you theory, no, rather than giving you theory, why not to give one practical example? स्पर्धा इतने गुस्से में कौन पढ़ता है? Rather than giving the theory, it's much better to start with one practical example. Meenakshi, Samriddhi, Bunny, Gayatri, Shravani, Amrit. Clear with this? Now, when you talk about one question of history optional, this was asked this year. इस साल सवाल पूछा उन्होंने 2023 में 2023 में एक सवाल पूछा. क्या सवाल पूछा उन्होंने? The Indus Saraswati cultural zone exhibited both homogeneity, similarities, and diversity. Discuss. यही बात है, इतनी सिंपल सी बात है. अब एक छोटी सी बात, इफ दिस वाज द क्वेश्चन दैट वाज आस्क्ड, उन्होंने 3 कीवर्ड दिया आपको. फर्स्ट कीवर्ड इज इंडस सरस्वती कल्चरल जोन. You get that? First keyword, Indus Saraswati cultural zone. Second, the element of homogeneity and the element of diversity. यही बात की उन्होंने. अब एक छोटी सी बात समझिए. What was Indus Saraswati cultural zone? Indus Valley civilization. Is this not? The first site that was discovered was Harappa. Trisha, you agree with this? The first site that was discovered, it was Harappa. That is why it was called Harappa civilization. Amrit, no? Then so many sites they were discovered in Indus around area. That is why it came to be known as Indus Valley civilization. And then now maximum number of sites, they are in Ghaggar Hakra river basin or Saraswati river. Dry Saraswati river is equated with Ghaggar Hakra river. So maximum number of sites, they were in the dry riverbed of Saraswati river. So that is why now a new nomenclature is emerging for IBC. It is called Indus Saraswati culture and Indus Saraswati civilization. Maximum number of sites in Indus and Saraswati, that is Ghaggar Hakra river area around. So how to write this answer? How to write this answer in UPSC? इस बार पूछा गया था ये सवाल. Simple introduction. अब एक simple introduction दीजिए. Just go for a simple introduction. Introduction has to be simple. It should not be very difficult and consuming many words. It should be simple so that it is not consuming many words and it is introducing what you are going to write about. So introduction has to be very simple. बहुत ही simple, no? The major concentration of IV sites, Indus Valley civilization sites, has been found from Indus Saraswati zone. First of all, एक simple formula है. What is the simple formula of introduction? Whenever you get a technical term, define that term. Whenever you get a technical term, they ask about numismatics. Introduce. Numismatic is the study of coins. No? Here they're talking about Indus Saraswati cultural zone. First, let the examiner in writing to know that you're going to write about Indus Valley civilization. You're going to write about Indus Valley civilization. The major concentration of Indus Valley sites has been found from Indus Saraswati zone. Then start writing. This is the introduction, simple introduction. Then start writing. First keyword was Indus Saraswati cultural zone. 2 more keywords. अब 2 keywords और थे, homogeneity and diversity. So what were the elements of homogeneity? Similarities. What were the elements of diversity? अब एक simple बात समझिए. आपने बोला homogeneity. Similarities. Don't you think that there was a uniform town planning across IVC sites? Homogeneous element. सबको पता है? You know that? Then Shravani is very simple. It was common. Then don't you think that the sewage and the roads, they were on grid pattern, 90-degree angle? It's common. In IBC sites, homogeneity. Don't you think that the sewage system was excellent? No, excellent sewage system that was there, connected with bathrooms, wells, no, covered sewage system, common across IBC. Then the brick, they were in the ratio of 1:4, no, common, very solid pattern that we find from across IBC. Then the script, pictographic script it was, but uniform script was there across IPC sites. The script was common for all of them. Pictographic script that we have not been able to read, but this was a common script. Then the weights and the measures, similar weights and measures they were using. The ratio was in the form of 16, no? 16, 64. This is how the weight they were increasing, but weights and measures, constant weights and measures that they were using across IBC. Across IBC, we have found the evidence of Mother Goddess. Across IBC, every site has given the evidence of the worship of Mother Goddess. Similar element, homogeneity, phallic worship. Phallic worship, Shivling is example of phallic worship. So they were all phallic worshippers. We have found the evidence of phallic worship from all the sites. From all the sites, we have found so many terracotta toys. Terracotta was very commonly used. Jewelry. The Hadappans were expert jewelers. They were very fond of jewelry, no? So many bead, necklace, so many things that we have found. Don't you think that there were so many common elements? So many common elements, no? Homogeneity. Pani clear with this, Meenakshi clear with this. Then, just wait, just for a moment. Then I'll invite query just for 2 minutes. Just wait, just let me complete this point. Then if you talk about diversity, no, if you talk about diversity, so homogeneity, one angle that we have covered, Gayatri, stay there on camera. So homogeneity, one angle that we have covered. Now you're talking about diversity. If you're talking about diversity, what was something that was not common? It was common, but that was not common among the sites? Fire worship. Fire worship is Aryan culture. अगर अभी भी पूजा करेंगे, you will find a diya or agarbatti would be there. Fire worship is Aryan culture, but from Lothal and Kalibanga, NCERT book even will give you that information. From Lothal and Kalibanga, we have the example of fire worship, diversity. Diversity. Then double burial from Lothal. This is not common. पहले तो बहुत डरावनी बात थी क्योंकि डबल बरियल, 2 skeletons in 1 grave, 2 लोग एक साथ तो मरे नहीं होंगे. अब ये काफी डरावनी बात थी. But then we have the evidence of double burial from Lothal, diversity. We have no other example like this. Then Pashupati seal from Mohenjo-daro. Unique it was, no? It was unique, no, Samriddhi? Meenakshi. So it was unique evidence that we get from Mohenjo-daro. Pashupati seal. We did not find Pashupati-like seals in many other places. Then the priest like a person which has been found from Mohenjo-daro. The image of the priest that we have found from Mohenjo-daro, the priest-like identity in other places, even in terracottas that we have not found. But the image of the priest has been found from Mohenjo-daro. Then Surkotada, we have the evidence of horse bone. Surkotada, we have the evidence of horse bone. Unique it is, because in other sites, we do not have any clear evidence of use of horse. But Surkotada, it's exceptional. We find the evidence of horse bone. Then in Banavali, the settlement is oval. Otherwise, the settlement is grid pattern. But in Banavali, the settlement is oval. Don't you think that oval settlement is not something that is common among the Harappan civilization? Then from Chanu-Daro, so just below Mohenjo-daro, you'll find that, like just nearby Mohenjo-daro, you'll find the place Chanu-Daro. Ancient, there is no citadel, no upper town, and there is no fortification. So neither there is upper town, Harappan towns. How they are divided? Upper town, lower town, no? And fortification is there. There is no fortification, no upper town, no lower town. Don't you think that then certainly Chanu-Daro is exceptional finding? Then, if you talk about so many uncommon things, they would show diversity. They would show diversity. अब एक छोटी सी बात समझिए. If you talk about conclusion, can we not say that both the elements of homogeneity and diversity, they were very easily available and visible within the Indus-Saraswati cultural zone? Just conclude that in a very simple way. This was UPSC 2023 question. Now, can you imagine how simple history optional would be? क्या आप समझते हैं हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल कितना सिंपल होगा? अब मैं आपको एक मजेदार बात बताता हूं. That I'm not using any extra fact than what you will use there in GS. ये सब तो GS में भी पढ़ेंगे. What we will develop in 5 months, the approach to tackle history optional. The approach to tackle history optional. History optional is going to be the simplest optional among all. ये सबसे simple optional है, बहुत ही मजेदार. Anyone can actually study history optional. The simplest optional it is. आपने जो भी GS में पढ़ा है, we will just use a permutation combination of that and the conceptual understanding of that to write the history optional like thing. What we will mix? The conceptual clarity and historiography. Historiography. This is what we will do. Romila Thapar, the first chapter is about historiography, perception of past. No, perception of past. That is what is the first chapter of Romila Thapar. We will just add conceptual understanding and then the overall historiography to make it go to the history optional level. Very simple it is. अच्छा, एक और भी सवाल पूछना ही चाहता था मन की बात में, और वो सवाल ये है कि अगर ये सवाल हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल इस साल पूछा गया, no, if this is what they asked this year, my question is, if this is what we have to answer there in history optional or in optional overall, suppose you keep answering the questions like this in every single question, why you cannot be the topper that's the year? आप क्यों नहीं टॉपर बन सकते उस साल के? आपको पता है आने वाले साल का टॉपर कौन है? Do you know the topper? किसी को नहीं पता. गायत्री किसी को नहीं पता, बनी किसी को नहीं पता, स्पर्धा, श्रावणी, त्रिशला, अमृत, समृद्धि, किसी को नहीं पता. किसी को नहीं पता. तो अगर किसी को नहीं पता तो आप भी हो सकते हैं टॉपर. ऐसा हो सकता है कि अगले साल आप टॉपर हो और आप मेरे साथ यहाँ पर हो कि हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल में सबसे ज्यादा स्कोर करने वाले टॉपर से इस साल सेमिनार करने जा रहे हैं हम लोग. ये आपको बताएंगे हाउ टू स्कोर इन हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल. और हो सकता है आप मेरे साथ हो सेमिनार में, दैट इस बच्चे ने सारे रिकॉर्ड तोड़ दिए ऑप्शनल के, किसी भी सब्जेक्ट में किसी ने ऑप्शनल में इतना स्कोर कभी किया ही नहीं था. ऑल दिस इज अ गुड पॉसिबिलिटी. और ये सब बातें काफी खतरनाक है कि अगर मैं बोलूं कि आप टॉपर बन जाइए, पर ट्रस्ट नहीं, खतरनाक बातों की शुरुआत आपने की है, क्योंकि आप आए हैं यूपीएससी में बहुत सारे छोटे एग्जाम छोड़कर. आपने बोला कि आपको बनना है डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट, आपको बनना है सुपरिटेंडेंट ऑफ पुलिस, और आपको बनना है द बिग आईएफएस ऑफिसर्स. तो खतरनाक बातों की शुरुआत तो आपने की है. तो जब खतरनाक काम करना ही है, when the risk has to be taken, why it should be taken just 50% and 40%? Risk should always be taken 100%. अगर मुश्किल काम करना ही यूपीएससी में तो सबसे ही मुश्किल करिए, टॉपर ही बनते हैं. Always plan for the best in UPSC, go for the best, then you are that motivated. Then one last thing that I would like to discuss from my side, how to tackle the map section. It's very interesting. No, how to tackle the map section. Map section को कैसे हम tackle करेंगे, उससे पहले अमृत, yes, what is your question, Amrit?
So in forming the answers, the writing it in a point by point fashion is enough. No further explanation is needed.
First of all, this is the answer structure that I have shown you. No, this is the answer structure. When you talk about model answer, how that should be, either you use the small paragraphs, or you use the points, but points should be like explaining itself. आपने बोला पशुपति सील, no? आपने बोला the fire worship. Then you have to write there. The fire worship is Aryan trait. It is not visible generally among the sites of IBC. But then Lothan and Kalibanga, they are exceptional because they give the evidence of fire worship, showing the diversity. So that point would be a small paragraph, or the point would be in the itself form, but you're explaining the point there itself. When you're writing in point, the answer structure would become far more clear. That these are the points that you have mentioned. No, but then the point should be self-explanatory. You are explaining the points. Then only you are writing 250 to 300 words around to explain the entire answer. Then you are using the entire 250 or 300 words, like the entire space, to write the answer. Any other question? कोई सवाल? Any other question? Then Trisha, Shravani, Pani. Yes, Pani.
Sir, I had a doubt with regards to answer writing.
Yes.
Sir, like in graduation, we all have that habit of overwriting stuff because we have to fill in the pages. So, sir, when we are tackling such questions like IVC, homogeneity, diversity, so how do we break out from the habit of writing too much and writing concisely?
पहली बात तो ये है Bunny and others that you should understand that when you're big officers and when you're writing on file, the file noting that would be understood by the juniors. There's a limited space where you can write the file noting. That is why in UPSC, unlike the university exam, we are writing 5-6 pages. You have to express everything in 250 to 300 words, not more than that. You have to just talk something that is just sensible and to the point. Very sensible and to the point. And you should have the habit of creating the press C summary like thing. For example, Mansabdari. In Satish Chandra, you will read Mansabdari maybe in 4 pages. Then in class notes dictation, we will create a summary of 2 pages, 2 class notes pages. No? So that would help you summarize the things in 250 words, 250 to 300 words. In university, what is the trouble? That they're asking some questions, but in very detail, and other things, other parts of syllabus, they are not touched at all. They're not touched at all. But जब आप UPSC की बात करते हैं, in a very common and in a very simple way, no, in a very common and in a very simple way, but then you have to understand, and you have to finish every part of the syllabus. 100% syllabus cover होना चाहिए, because you do not know where they would ask the question from. Then one last thing, the map section I'll discuss. But before that, this is my phone number, 8750-619-659. This is my phone number. Now, anyone who is willing to discuss anything about history optional, you can drop me a message and we can go for one-on-one discussion. I'll give you a time where we can go for one-on-one discussion for history optional. So this is my number, 8750-619-659. You can directly drop me a message to discuss something about history optional. One last thing about seminar, and then a query section from your side, and then one last thing I'll discuss. So 2 things. This is the second last thing that I'm discussing, but a very interesting thing. How to tackle the map section. How to tackle the map section. I'm taking a question from 2023. I'm taking one question from 2023, optional. Now, this question, first of all, they'll give you a map. Ek map denge. Exam mein, they'll give you a map. All of you just try to understand it very carefully. It would forever solve your problem of map question. Then others, those who are not on camera, if they're on camera, to dosti ho jayegi, jaldi. That would be much better. Then camera pe aa jaiye. When you see the map, pehli baat kya hai? The students, where they waste their time and energy, they think that they have to learn how to plot the sides. आपके अंदर क्या मिसकॉन्सेप्ट है कि आप साइड्स प्लॉट करना सीखेंगे? मत करिए, नहीं पूछता यूपीएससी। पहले ही दे रखा उन्होंने साइड्स। They have already given you the sides. Is this not? That is 10 years back pattern was there where you had to plot the sides. You do not have to learn how to plot the sides. The sides would be plotted. अब याद रखिए, the sides would be plotted. You have to recognize the site and you have to give the description. You have to give the description. So your attempt should be, your effort should be in recognition the site, recognizing the site, and then the description, the descriptive details in 30 words that you have to give. You have to be accurate in that. आपकी मेहनत वहां जानी चाहिए. Rather than plotting the sites, wasting the time there for 2 months, that's useless absolutely. They will give you the sites. You just recognize the sites and give the description. Your effort should be finding the description. Do not go for a wrong way. Plotting the site is not needed now. The sites would be plotted. You have to give the description. आपको description देना है. Then suppose if I give you a picture of Noor Jahan, would you like to mug up? अगर नूर जहां की फोटो देखेंगे तो याद करेंगे? गायत्री ने बोला no, elle tapo. No, we will not. Then certainly if you're not going to mug up the picture of Noor Jahan, then why you're trying to mug up the maps? That is also picture. That is also picture. You just should try to be careful in observing the map section. That's all. इतना ही करना, you have to carefully observe that. But then think about it. This question is from 2023. ये 2023 का सवाल है. मैं आपको दिखाना चाहता हूँ. What was the question? उन्होंने बोला a dockyard that you have to locate in 8th location. उन्होंने बोला 8th location is representing a dockyard. Then if you talk about the dockyard in 8th location, this is the 8th location. Can you locate it? आपको दिख रहा है location? Here on the mouth of Bhogwa River, Lothal was there. In Lothal, in IVC, in Lothal, in IVC, we have found a dockyard. The earliest evidence of dockyard in ancient world, that is a tidal dockyard, that comes from Lothal, IVC site. अच्छा मुझे एक बात बताइए, when you will read about Indus Valley civilization, will you not read about Lothal? पढ़ेंगे ना? So that time the map would be there, IVC sites. You just have to be careful in observing that Lothal is here. That's all. In optional, they would ask, they will give you the hint that it's a dockyard site, it's 8th site. In Gujarat, Lothal is a super important site, and certainly we have found the evidence of dockyard. Dipanshu, Samriddhi, clear with this? Super simple would be the map question. This is 2023 UPSC question. 2023 UPSC question, no? One more question from 2023, this question. It says that 6th is a Mauryan reservoir. 6th is a Mauryan reservoir. Now 6th, where you will find 6th? Where you will find 6th? 6th is a Mauryan reservoir. Reservoir, Talab, Bani, Gayatri, Shravani. Have you heard about Junagadh inscription? Junagadh inscription of Rudradaman. No? Junagadh, Rudradaman inscription, have you heard about that? There, Rudradaman, the Shaka ruler, would talk about the repairing of Lake Sudarshan. Repairing of Lake Sudarshan that was constructed by one of the officers of Chandragupta Maurya. Pushyagupta was the officer and the time was that of Chandragupta Maurya. So when you talk about Mauryan dynasty and the extent of the rule, we'll discuss about this Junagadh inscription, because from here, if there was one Mauryan reservoir has been found, that would show that the control of the Mauryas was there up to this part. Upinder Singh says that would indicate that the Mauryan control was there up to this part. Junagadh inscription, super important inscription. The first long inscription in Sanskrit was pure Sanskrit, was Junagadh inscription by Rudradaman. 6th is the site. Is this difficult? क्या ये सच में मुश्किल है? बहुत ही आसान है. UPSC History optional is the easiest optional. Trust me, if you do not have to prepare for GS, अगर आपको GS के लिए नहीं prepare करना हो, in 60 days I can make you prepare for History optional. अगर आपको GS नहीं पढ़ना हो, in just 2 months, and I can make you write History optional. Is that simple optional? Now, this was 2023 question, Samriddhi. 2022, I'll show you some questions. See, 2022 History optional question. Again, just be careful. This is 2022 question. अब फिर से देखिए. The sites, they have been plotted already. The site, they have been plotted by the UPSC board. अब याद रखिए, साइट्स को प्लॉट करने में अपना टाइम वेस्ट मत करिए. दैट इज नॉट नीडेड. दीपांशु, मीनाक्षी, क्लियर विद दिस? गायत्री, क्लियर विद दिस? यू डू नॉट हैव टू प्लॉट द साइट्स. पहले के पैटर्न में, अर्लियर पैटर्न, यू हैड टू प्लॉट द साइट्स. सो मोस्ट ऑफ द कैंडिडेट दे वेस्ट द टाइम इन प्लॉटिंग द साइट्स. 2 महीने वेस्ट कर देंगे, पूछता ही नहीं यूपीएससी. द साइट्स वुड ऑलरेडी बी प्लॉटेड. यू जस्ट हैव टू रिकॉग्नाइज द साइट्स एंड यू हैव टू डिस्क्राइब अबाउट दैट. साइट्स प्लॉट करने में टाइम वेस्ट मत करिए. You just should be careful about recognizing the site and giving a description of that. Here they are asking about Neolithic pit dwelling. उन्होंने बोला Neolithic pit dwelling is 3rd site. Is 3rd site? Now Neolithic pit dwelling in 3rd site. This is the 3rd site in Kashmir. In Kashmir, a super important site is Burj Home. A super important site is Burj Home. No, Burj Home. So when you talk about Burj Home, Neolithic pit dwelling, so what are the characteristics that we have found from the Kashmiri sites? Pit dwelling, pit. They would dig the pit. They would go inside. They would cover themselves to save themselves from cold. Pit dwelling, that is a characteristic of Kashmiri site. Second, dog burial. Dog burial. So they would bury the dogs along with the masters. Characteristic of Kashmiri sites. And then bone tools. Bone tools. So in Kashmir, when the snowfall would be there, it's difficult to find the stone tools. So the use of bone tools, all the three are characteristic of the Kashmiri sites. The moment they would say Neolithic plus pit dwelling, you know that they are talking about Kashmiri site. You know that they are talking about Kashmiri Neolithic site. And the super important Kashmiri Neolithic site is Burj Home. 2022, another question. उन्होंने बोला 7th. You have to mark 7th. Harappan UNESCO site. उन्होंने बोला 7th is Harappan UNESCO site. 7th. 7th, Harappan UNESCO site. Don't you think that recently one thing that was much in news? Dholavira. Dholavira in Gujarat got UNESCO World Heritage Site status. In pre-GS, UPSC also asked the question about that. In recently, when you talk about Harappa, Harappan civilization. So Dholavira got UNESCO World Heritage Site status. So in Gujarat, a super important site, in Gujarat, a super important site is Dholavira. Dholavira, UNESCO World Heritage Site status. They're asking about a UNESCO site. The only site probably in IVC that has got a UNESCO site is Dholavira. And they're asking about that. And in Gujarat, they are showing, is it not super easy to guess? They're asking about Dholavira. Dholavira has been given the UNESCO World Heritage Site status because of its unique water management system. Water management system. So just talk about that. अब याद रखिए, in history optional map questions, do not worry about plotting the sites. In every exam now, in the new pattern, they are giving you the sites already plotted. You just have to worry about recognizing the site. And there you should give the description of the site. So आपका ध्यान होना चाहिए recognizing the site and to figure out the description about that. But that would be very simple, because if you talk about IVC, we cannot complete the description without knowing about Dholavira, or you talk about Lothal and the sites like that. So that would be super easy. देर से आने वाले बच्चे इतने गुस्से में बिल्कुल नहीं आएंगे. This is better. This is much better. What's your good name? भाव्यता. बिल्कुल ठीक है. भाव्यता बिल्कुल ठीक है. बस गुस्से में नहीं बैठेंगे. The per capita smile should not go down off offline batch as well. Then this is what I wanted to discuss. You're slightly late. This is what we had to discuss here about the questions about the map section or anything like this. Any questions that which are there from your side? अगर कोई सवाल हो तो आपकी तरफ से? Any questions that you have? किसी को कोई सवाल पूछना है? Any question? Any other question that you have? So before I leave, I'll show you a simple thing. One more question. Because एक कैंडिडेट बस अभी आ गया है देर से और गुस्से में बैठा, तो मैं थोड़ा सा डरा हुआ उस बच्चे से, तो मुझे लगता है कि एक सवाल और दिखा देना अच्छी बात होगी. एक छोटा सा सवाल आपको दिखाता हूं. देखिए 2023 का हमने एक सवाल सॉल्व किया था. आई विल शो यू अ क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम 2022 ऑप्शनल. औरंगजेब्स डेक्कन पॉलिसी वाज अ मेजर फैक्टर. Aurangzeb's Deccan policy was a major factor in Mughal decline. Discuss. Optional 2022. एक सवाल पूछा उन्होंने. अब ध्यान दीजिए. Aurangzeb tried to tackle Marathas. In Deccan, Shivaji. And for that he stayed in Deccan. More than 27 years, Aurangzeb stayed in Deccan, trying to control the Marathas. That drained the resources of empire. And that destabilized the political control in North. And one of the reasons why Aurangzeb led to decline of Mughals. One thing that you have to understand. But then the question tag says discuss. The question says that discuss. Don't you think that certainly Aurangzeb's Deccan policy was one of the reasons why the Mughals declined, but there were multiple other factors as well because of which Mughals declined. So if we say that yes, Aurangzeb's policy was one of the reasons why the Mughals declined, it's okay, we accept it. But we do not completely agree with this. There were multiple other factors that also led to decline of the Mughals. We start a discussion because the question tag is discuss. If we change the question track and we say elucidate, just a moment. If we change the question tag and we change it to elucidate, then we have to prove linear that Aurangzeb himself was only responsible for decline, because we have to prove the statement. We are not talking about elucidate. The question tag is discuss. So we have to counter the statement to start a discussion. No, we have to counter the statement to start a discussion. Then see this. आपने बोला Aurangzeb's policy. The Maratha policy in Deccan was a failure that drained the resources of empire. This was one of the reasons why the Mughals declined. We have to agree with this. कि ये बात बिल्कुल सही है. But don't you think that Aurangzeb was also expanding the Mughal empire beyond the point of control by capturing the areas like Assam, like Golconda, Bijapur? It was not possible with old methods of communication to control such a big empire. This was also responsible for the decline. At the same time, Aurangzeb was following very intolerant religious policy. And that is why majority of the people in India, they had started opposing the Mughal rule. This was another reason. So Deccan policy was one of the reasons why the Mughals declined. But we have to counter that there were other reasons as well why the Mughals were declining. But then we have to increase the discussion, the scope of the discussion, that Aurangzeb only was not responsible for the decline. Think about it. Don't you think that after Aurangzeb, all the rulers who came, they were just very weak puppet rulers? No, from Bahadur Shah I to Bahadur Shah II. Don't you think that entire Mughal court was the scene of constant conspiracies? The polity was crumbling down. Don't you think that the powerful kingmakers, like you talk about Nizam, you talk about Abdullah Hussain Ali and Abdullah Khan, Sayyid brothers, they were constantly controlling the kings, and all this was lead to political disaster-like situation among the Mughals. This was another reason why the Mughals declined. But don't you think that militarily the Mughals were also on decline? There was constant attack of Nadisha. No, there was constant attack of Abdali. Then the Marathas under the Peshwas, Baji Rao, no, Balaji Vishwanath, Baji Rao, Baji Rao, they were all on rise and they were constantly attacking over the Mughal territory. And the Mughals were also on decline because out of the Mughal territories, now independent kingdoms were emerging, like Bengal, like Hyderabad, like Awadh. So the territorial breaking down of Mughal empire was also going on. And not only this, a big empire would never decline without the failure of economy. Why the economy was failing? Because the main income of the Mughals was depending on agriculture by collecting the rent and revenue from the farmers. But agriculture itself was failing. Mughals were not trying to develop any new means of industry, economy, or any other thing. No? Then don't you think that the Jagirdari crisis was intensifying? What was Jagir? It was the land piece that was given to the Mansabdars mainly for the salary system. But gradually, when the good Jagirs were over, suppose a land piece would be given to the salary to a Mansabdar in Ganga Yamuna Dwab, the Mansabdar was very happy. But if a land piece as a Jagir would be given to a Mansabdar in the Rajasthan, no, Jaisalmer area that was very unproductive, or in Afghan area, certainly the Mansabdar would not be very happy with the revenue of the area. When there was growing Jagirdari crisis, the Mansabdars, they were getting the revenue from the Jagir, the Mansabdari system started failing, and entire Mughal administration collapsed. Then don't you think that the Mughals also declined because the modern British were there in India? The British were modern power, European power, modern in their military. polity, administration, and the Mughals were medieval power, they would hardly be in a position to compete with the modern European power. Can we not introduce in this question, no? Can we not introduce a simple introduction? To some extent, policies of Aurangzeb were responsible for decline of Mughals. मैंने बोला to some extent. Yes, we agree with the statement that Aurangzeb's Deccan policy was responsible for the decline to some extent. But that would also prove that to other extent, there were other factors as well. No? Because in introduction, we said that to some extent, we agree that Aurangzeb was responsible. So now the examiner knows that we are agreeing with the statement, but partially. So in question, in the answer, we are going to refute that. So examiner को खुद भी पता है इस introduction के बाद कि हम partially ही मानेंगे that Aurangzeb was partially responsible for the decline. So in writing, what we will do now, we will counter that point as well. Introduction should be simple. It should introduce what you are going to write. Can we not conclude that with the advent of the modern Europeans like British, the decline of medieval powers like Mughals was inevitable? अब मेरा एक सवाल है. Suppose Aurangzeb was very religiously tolerant monarch. Suppose, no, Aurangzeb was very religiously tolerant monarch. And suppose Aurangzeb even would have not fought with the Marathas in Deccan. But don't you think that still, if the modern Europeans were there in India, the decline of medieval power would be inevitable? The Mughals declined when the Europeans were there in India. The Marathas also declined. The Nawabs of Bengal, they also declined. Entire India declined when the British were there in India. Not only India, entire Asia declined when the Europeans were there in Asia. Not only Asia, entire Africa declined when the Europeans were there in Africa. This was the time of rise of imperialism. This was the time of rise of imperialism. So we have to understand that something global was going on that led to decline of the Mughals. पर अब मेरा सवाल यही है that if this is what we have to do in history optional, अगर यही बात कहनी है हमें history optional में, that was this year's question, 2023 question, this is 2022 question. Is not history optional very super simple optional? क्या जरूरत से ज्यादा simple सा optional नहीं है? I told you 5 months that I will take to finish the course. If you're a good student, I would take 5 months. If you're not good student, I'll take just 4 months. If you're good students, I'll take 5 months. Because then you're discussing more. Then you're discussing more. It will take 5 months. Then it will take 5 months. No? Bani, Amrit, Gayatri, Trisha, Meenakshi, Shamridhi, all of you. This is what I wanted to discuss with you in this seminar. Then I want to let you know, मैं आपको एक बात और भी बताना चाहता हूँ, that when you talk about history, as I showed you and as I told you, please do not try to tackle history optional through facts. Concepts, very conceptual. We have to make it very conceptual. Your task would be very simple. You have to come every day in the class in time. And then in any book that is important, whatever is important, I'll discuss that here in the class itself. There are so many sources for all the different sections of history. For all the books, whatever is good, जो भी जरूरी है, whether that is in Upinder Singh or in R.S. Sharma or in Romila Thapar or in D.N. Jha or in D.D. Kosambi or in Sumit Sarkar or in S. Bandyopadhyay or in Grover or in Bipan Chandra, any book, whatever is good, we will discuss there in the class itself. And then I'll dictate you in simple points and simple English. You just have to go back to revise that once, giving 20 minutes. 20 minute का time दीजिए, उसे revise करिए. Each time one chapter would be over, you have to come and you have to appear for the test in the live class itself. अगर आप offline है तो वह सामने बैठ के question attempt करिए. अगर आप online है तो कैमरे में सामने रहिए और question attempt करिए. So that you will have the practice for appearing in exam like scenario. Looking at the notes and then writing the answer is very easy. But when you're writing at your own, that would take you to the another difficulty level. वो ज़्यादा easy होगा. वो आपको exam ज़्यादा easy बनाएगा. This is what we are going to do. Anyone has got any questions? Anyone? किसी को कोई सवाल पूछना है? Gayatri, you have a question? Anyone has got any other question? Then I will close this session. But before that, One last thing. 1.5 years. It will take 1.5 years time period to complete the entire preparation. Like suppose you are preparing for the coming prelims. आने वाले prelims के लिए आप appear हो रहे हैं, not this, for the coming prelims. It would take almost 1 year's time. From there to mains, and from mains to interview, it would be around more than 1.5 years of time that you're taking for the entire process. What would be the most difficult task? सबसे ज़्यादा मुश्किल क्या होगी? To keep yourself motivated for 1.5 years. To keep yourself motivated for 1.5 years so that you capitalize on the day and you generate maximum efficiency out of it. That is what is the most difficult task. Then just let me tell you that I'll give you a very difficult task. If you're obsessed with UPSC, that candidate would not clear UPSC. If a candidate is undermotivated, that candidate is good for nothing. Buddha was not demotivated and Buddha was not obsessed. Buddha was balanced. Buddha was perfect. Perfection is balance. Perfection is balance. Then, if you're too much worried about the result, then again you would be in trouble. Because then you're always looking at this like a dukandari like thing, what you're getting out of it, what you're getting out of it. I told you, Battle of Haldi Ghati, Maharana Pratap, we respect so much Maharana Pratap. He did not fight for the result. He wanted to set example. So what was the result? What he wanted? Just to win a battle? No. To inspire the people for the purpose, that is the highest goal. Maharana Pratap was never defeated. कभी नहीं हारे महाराणा प्रताप. मरते हुए बंदे से बोल दीजिएगा ना कि महाराणा प्रताप के बारे में सुना है, तो 2 सेकंड और जी लेगा, बोलेगा कि हाँ सुना है. कोई बंदा मर रहा होगा ना, उसे बोल देगा रानी लक्ष्मीबाई के बारे में जानते हो, मरता हुआ बंदा बोल देगा 2 सेकंड और जी लेगा, बोलेगा कि हाँ जानता तो हूँ महारानी के बारे में. महारानी लक्ष्मीबाई and Maharana Pratap, they were not fighting to win a small battle. It was for inspiring people. They were leaders. Leaders would not bother about the battles and the immediate result. The leaders would bother about the purpose. कि क्या purpose serve होगा? तो अकेले लड़ जाएंगे वो? बहादुर बहुत होते हैं वो. तो अगर आप बहुत बहादुर हैं, तो आप बहुत परेशान नहीं होंगे. You would not be much troubled in UPSC. One last thing before I close off this session. I just want to show you that if you're bothered about yourself, शायद आप अच्छे कैंडिडेट नहीं हैं. शायद बहुत अच्छा कैंडिडेट मैं तो नहीं मान पाऊंगा आपको. मुझे लगता है कि अगर मतलब 400 बहुत बेकार से कैंडिडेट मिल जाए, उसकी जगह मुझे 5 बहुत कमाल के कैंडिडेट मिल जाए ना, जिनको पता हो अपना पर्पस. Those who know their purpose, what they're fighting for, I would be much happier. तो मुझे ज्यादा खुशी होगी. It's not about numbers. It's not about numbers. बिल्कुल भी नहीं. The purpose should be very clear. The purpose should be clear. You should know whom you are fighting for. कि आप लड़ किसके लिए रहे हैं. Trust me, if you're fighting for yourself, you're always worried. If you're fighting for the purpose, you're never worried, because then you're like a commander, and commander is not much worried about just winning and losing the war. The purpose must be fulfilled. There is a purpose. UPSC has a purpose. I wish you find your purpose, and I wish you become yourself. It was just 2 hours a session that was there, and certainly 2-hour session, like 1.5 hours around. We discussed about 1.5 hours around session it was, but I'm very happy that even for some time, at least you were there with me, and we discussed something useful. So before I close off this session, I have given you my phone number. No, I have given you my phone number again. For those who do not have my phone number, they can write it down. You can directly drop me a message to discuss with me history optional. But then, before I close the session, I would like to tell that if I have to wish something for you, no, if I have to wish something for you, I can just wish you that you become what you are. Don't you think that you're very powerful? And don't you think that you're very ambitious? Actually, it's time. Let's not be afraid of ourselves. सबसे ज्यादा आप अपने आप से डरते हैं और सबसे मुश्किल की बात यही है. So someday when you think that you are the topper of UPSC, first thing would be a sense of fear. कि नहीं नहीं ये तो ज्यादा बड़ी बात सोच ली, ये तो ज्यादा बड़ी बात सोच ली. I wish that no longer you remain afraid of yourself, you become what you are. Big goals. UPSC clearing and joining would be a good start. एक अच्छी शुरुआत होगी. Just a very brilliant start that would be. Very good start. It is one of the ways to reach where you want to reach. Mother Teresa was not ICS. Gandhiji was not ICS. Rabindranath Tagore was not ICS. कोई नहीं थे इनमें से ICS. But they were brilliant. बहुत कमाल के थे वो. तो आप जहां पहुंचेंगे वहां पहुंचने का एक रास्ता यूपीएससी. आई विश यू अचीव दैट वेरी क्विकली. जल्दी आप पहुंच जाए वहां तक. Always you can drop a message, you can discuss history optional with me. Thank you so much for being there, and thank you so much for being my student. Thank you. See you again. Take care. God bless. God bless.